Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of The Imperfect Brand, where we talk about embracing our imperfections and utilizing our strengths instead. I love to think about placing emphasis on our strengths, and the weaknesses will catch up eventually. So, I'm Valerie, your host for today, and we have with us Ruth. She is a communications specialist. And as humble as I know Ruth to be, I'm sure when I say specialist, she's, I'm just really great at communication. But she really does have a deep understanding of how to help people with their unique voice, or at least to find their unique voice. I have introduced you, Ruth, but I'd like you to share just a little bit about yourself so that everyone knows who they're listening to today.
Perfect. Thank you, Val, once again for having me here with you today. I'm actually really excited for us to finally have this conversation together. So just a little bit about myself. I live in the city of South Africa, and I've been here for most of my life. And I studied law, and it was in my final year in my law degree that I decided I didn't want to be a lawyer. But I went on to complete the degree, and after that's when my journey with marketing and communication started. And my background really has, including the NPO sector and corporate. And so it's been a really beautiful balance of learning how to communicate with various stakeholders, whether it be donors or government or just employees within the same organization. And really, even work in different places, my passion has always been people and communication. And so I've found that I've never traveled far from that. That's been the golden thread in my career. And 2 years ago, that also led me to start my own platform, a website called Tactfully, where I help young professionals to master the art of communicating professionally. And so it's just a website that has free resources, ebooks, and articles that help young people to navigate their way through their careers by communicating professionally.
Yeah, so that's Ruth, everyone, and we're happy to be here on LinkedIn Live. This it's quite windy, but
Wow, that probably.
I've never had this problem before because it
Mm,
shouldn't. I can feel here that it was loose on the interface here, but let's go for it again.
sure.
Okay. I hope I don't lose you as well because you were lagging a bit. Is your connectivity okay?
Mine is perfectly fine as far as I know. Yeah, mine is okay. But
Okay.
just let me know if I am lagging. Just flag it somehow.
I'll just say, okay, let's go again. That's fine. Okay.
Perfect.
That's great. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Thank you so much for your introduction, Ruth. I'm really happy to have you here on this conversation. Now, before we dive in, I think it's important to let the audience know that this live session is being pre-recorded. It's here on LinkedIn Live and also available on Instagram Live. And Ruth and I, mostly me, will be available in the comments section if you have any questions or have something to share or say. It's a little bit weird. I know it's not the same as, interacting directly. However, we are there and available to chat if you have any burning questions about what we are talking about. So we're going to be talking about cultivating your communication strengths, or at least understanding what those strengths are. I love to share a bit of my story in the fact that I really feel like I struggle with communicating with clarity, contrary to popular belief. And especially when it comes to public, I often feel like my heart starts beating out of my chest. I even start sweating a little bit. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to say the right thing. I may have all the cue cards and everything that needs to be said, but I kind of like hiding, I could say, behind a camera instead of being at a physical event. And so one of my challenges actually for 2025 is to start going to networking events. And I have to be honest, that terrifies me to stand in a room full of people or professionals and be like, hey, so like, I don't even know where to start. I don't know. I don't know if I'll be any good at it, or if they're gonna look at me and be like, "Oh, that's novice," right? Because it's also a very different environment when you come as an entrepreneur versus when you are representing a company. So now that I'm on my own journey, I have to now put on a different set of shoes, which means that my conversation also changes. So, my question to you, Ruth, is how do you naturally communicate? Like, what would you say is like a starting point in any environment? Where do you start?
Sure, that's a very good question, Val. So I basically start off by listening. So I know a lot of people say that, being a good communicator means that you can speak well, eloquent, people understand you when you speak. And those are amazing things, but those don't make up good communication. I think the starting point is to be able to listen well. So when I'm in a conversation with somebody, I, I, I limit my right to talk by listening to them first, because I can also think about what I want to say next. But also, I don't want to say something that may not be necessary or relevant to the conversation. So I find that when I listen first, I'm able to pick up what I need to say, what I don't need to say, what's relevant, what's not.
Mm.
Obviously, this changes when you're in a setting where you have to speak, like you have to give a speech. So
Yeah.
that's completely different. But I think when you're starting with a conversation, it's good to listen first. I found that has often helped me, and then that sets me up really well to speak afterwards.
Yeah. And how would you say that strengthens your brand? I know a lot of people would say, I don't have a personal brand, or I don't have a brand because they're not influencers or creators. For as long as you have a representation of yourself that is publicly experienced, you are a brand. You are standing for something. And so in terms of cultivating the skill of listening first, what from your experience have you seen people, or where have you seen people flourish because of that ability, like in their brand, in their ability to be invited into spaces, just from that simple step?
I think I'd like to group listening with reading, because on some, especially when it's about a personal brand, sometimes people won't speak, but they read about what you're all about, and you present yourself through writing. I found that people are successful in elevating their personal brand when they first listen to who they are. So take time to get to know yourself outside of the noise, and also take time to get to know the platform on which your personal brand is on. So when I say the platform, I don't only mean social media, but it could be in the workspace, it could be through email, it could be in communication with a client or company. But when you listen and understand what that company, that platform is about, you will know how to brand yourself accordingly. So it's a twofold thing. You have to listen to who you are, so get to know yourself, get to understand who you are, and then get to understand the various platforms on which your personal brand will be on. And then you know how to tailor that for specific audiences or people. So I find that kind of helps, and I've seen people flourish because they're able to tailor their personal brand for the platform. So, for example, you could have a blog where you're able to give a lot of information about who you are, but then you get to a point where it's on Twitter, for example, and then it has to be bite sizes. So I found that people flourish when they know how to tailor it for the specific platform.
I love that you said that, because I think so many of us think that in order to be considered as great communicators, you have to be on a stage. You have to be invited into panels and thought leadership spaces and all of that. And what ends up happening is your introverts or people who might not necessarily desire the stage start to feel like, then where do I express myself? Where does my voice get recognized? Because I also have something great to share. I also have something of value to give. So definitely
Mm,
like choosing the platform, getting educated enough to know what those platforms will require of you to be successful on them. I have been carting away at Instagram for months and months. And theoretically, I know what I'm supposed to do, but I just don't have the time for it. I don't have time to do
mm,
behind the scenes videos and editing. And maybe you out there have a team, but you don't want your team to be dedicated to that kind of work. And so, find a space where your voice can be fully expressed is probably the better route to take. And then
mm.
work on enhancing that gift in that space. Would recommend something like being on collaborative articles, for example, joining or pairing up with Ruth and saying, you know what, Ruth, I have something amazing that I want to share. I know that you have this really great blog happening, and I'm a really good writer. Can you let us write something together to support, my work? And 9 times out of 10, I'm pretty sure the guy's going to be like, yes, because I need great content to be on my platform. The question then that I have is, how do we stay authentic? How do we stay true to ourselves in trying to communicate and share, especially with all of this pressure to be a certain way or have an impression of what success looks like in the communication space? What would you say is the one line that I need to hold to ensure that line never moves and I will, never go wrong there?
I use three words. These three words I found have helped me along my career, especially when there's confusion, especially when there are new trends, trying to figure out where you fit in. So these three words are find, focus, finish. So find, focus, finish. And I often refer to these three words because when I'm trying to communicate well, even if it's
Mm,
in something as easy as a conversation, I need to find the point I'm trying to make. I need to
yeah,
focus on that point and I need to finish so that it helps me in a conversation. It also helps me in a speech. So if I am presenting to people, I need to find the relevant things I'm trying to present, focus on those points, and
yeah,
finish. Yeah, exactly. I've found that in the world that we're living in today, and this will always be the challenge. There'll always be a new platform, a better trend, and it's very easy to lose who you are. But remember that nobody knows you better than you. So you
yeah,
can't be confused about yourself because no one else is going to tell your story. No one else is going to present you authentically to the world. That
yeah,
responsibility is on your shoulders. Now,
yeah,
communicating that doesn't necessarily mean you have to be great at public speaking, although that's a bonus, but you don't necessarily have to be great at public speaking. The key with communicating is you just have to be good at getting your message across. Communication simply means sharing information. It doesn't mean sharing information while speaking really well. It just simply means sharing information. So those
yeah,
three words, find, focus, finish, I found have helped me in very sticky situations, have helped me in helping me determine my story and sticking to it. No matter what trend comes around, I need to, who's Ruth? Let me
yeah.
communicate who Ruth is. Let me focus on who Ruth is. Let me finish. Let me communicate what I want people to know about Ruth.
I've also seen people make this mistake of working on, or could I say, putting out information without any thought, right? They have an opinion, it's a very strong opinion, very passionate about it. And what we forget in the back of our minds is that I have a brand reputation to guard. There's been many times where I start writing a post, and remember, communication is everything. It's how you speak, how you walk, how you talk, the look that you give, the comments you make in the comments section. I think sometimes we think we can hide in comments, because, well, no one really sees me in my physical business in the day to day. Social media is separate from me, right? Or they write a post and I don't care what anyone thinks because in the moment their business is going really well. And so, in terms of guarding your brand reputation over time, I actually think that there's, to be quite frank, lack of wisdom in that regard, in not caring about your different faces in the different environments. And which is probably why a lot of CEOs or people with those roles don't want to be on social, because that's where people kind of play around and mess around and say what they think and what they want. And they don't see it as a tool that can enhance their brand and their business's brand. And now in 2024 is a lot of the generations, millennials, Gen X, and those, after us. I'm a millennial. Hi, guys. But that generation wants to see the leadership on social. They want to know that they're real people leading real businesses, because those are the people that are going to work for you. They don't want to get there and be like, oh, this person is so uptight, or they won't even let me post something great about the company because it's written in the policy. So when we talk to those kind of people, your CEOs, your CFOs, there's so many C-suite people out there now, what would you encourage them to do in terms of enhancing their own communication?
I would say that it is not compulsory that a person should be on social media. I mean, it's
Yeah.
great because you're putting yourself out there, but it's not compulsory and it's not the first and last place that people will meet you. Although it is the most convenient place because you get to connect with people you otherwise would never meet in person. So it has
Yeah.
that benefit. But I don't want people to think that you're not a whole and complete person if you are not on social media. But there are
Love
ways
that.
that leaders can make themselves more known, and that could be in the safe boundaries of a company that they run. So that would be one example that comes to mind, is that where I currently work, we have a platform called Viva Engage, which is the more informal social media type platform where all employees get to engage with each other in an informal manner. There's like really cool banter that happens there. And so I feel that this is where a leader can really play in this space. Not that they would need to write offensive words or posts, but really engage with the employees. So if an employee posts something about the Chelsea game that was played over the weekend, a simple comment on that to say some banter, like, I don't support Chelsea, I hope they lose the next game. Just something funny. It doesn't necessarily have to be super serious, but it brings a human element. It shows employees that you as a leader are human. You're not a machine. Also, so when you do make mistakes, people can see that, no, although this person is a leader, he or she is a human at the end of the day, and we've got to have some grace for this person. So I feel that leaders shouldn't build walls around them. I understand that social media can be a scary place, but there are platforms within a company that are safe, that you can engage with everybody else so they can get to know you as a leader in a very fun and engaging manner.
I actually never thought about it that way. The fact that we are on a platform like LinkedIn today, the motivation from marketers would be everyone must be on LinkedIn. That's where it's happening. That's where you need to be. But I think we can be a little more creative than that. And creating a culture in our organizations, in our own interactive spaces, that says where I can fully find my voice and find a comfortable space to grow within myself, or in that space, is where I'm going to start. When you sign a client, they say, I want to be on this and this, and I'm like, but I don't think that aligns to your brand or even your vision and what you're trying to build. And even more so, that's not where your audience is. That's not where the people you want to reach live. They live somewhere else, and we have to go find where they are. And I think when it comes to developing communication strategies or messaging strategies, those are the things that we have to consider or factor in. You might be a bit camera shy, you might be slow speaking, you don't talk fast like Belle now. And so you have to say, what is there for me? If you had your top 5 communication skills or takeaways to share with the audience today, what would those 5 things be?
Whether you are somebody who has a speech impediment, somebody who is shy to communicate or talk to somebody, or whether you're great, I feel that these 4 skills are like just, they're the be all. So
Yeah.
first one, I'll always advocate for this one is listening.
Yes.
I can't state this one enough, because everybody wants to talk, but who's actually listening? And when we are having a conversation with one another, I shouldn't listen to respond. I should listen to understand, so that I can communicate with you effectively. But a lot of the times I find, especially lately, people have defensive listening. So they already have an answer. You're speaking, but they're not listening to you. They just want to wait for you to finish so they can speak, which is very
Yes.
dangerous, because the conversation doesn't end well. So
Yeah.
listening attentively, listening with understanding is so, so important. I can't like state that enough. So that's the first one. The second one is writing. I know, especially when we're on social media, we want to put down our thoughts and submit them immediately, post it immediately. We don't think about it, etc. But I'd like to encourage people to write. And I say this because writing helps you to get your message across, especially if you need to prepare something,
Yeah.
especially for those who struggle to think quick, those who need time to figure out the response. Get into the habit of writing, even if it's
Yeah.
point. Like just now, when you asked me a question, I didn't want to forget the gist of the question and what you were asking me. So I wrote it down because it helps me so I can
Yeah.
answer you effectively. So that would be the
Yeah.
second one, write things down. I think the third and fourth are actually one point. So it's probably three
Top
things.
3.
Because the third one I wrote down was empathy, but empathy actually falls under tact. And tact is
Oh
what I had
yeah.
as the fourth one. So I think in any line of communication, whatever position or role that you hold, whether professionally or in your personal capacity, please strive to have tact. And tact
Oh yeah.
is basically being able to communicate diplomatically, to have empathy, to be sensitive and respectful. Yeah, to have diplomacy really. And it's a huge skill to have, one that you will learn until you die, because no one's a professional at tact. But
Yeah.
I'd say that this applies to every single human being. If you can have tact, you will be able to communicate well, because you will be able to listen with empathy, communicate with empathy. You'll be able to communicate diplomatically, so you can read the room, not just saying things without a filter. And
Yes.
you're able to get your point across respectfully without creating offense.
Wow. I really love that, especially the point on reading the room. It happens a
Mm.
lot when people have presentations, actually. You want to get through your deck or your
Mm.
presentation slides. So you just read through it and read through it. And to the difference between someone who has tact and someone who just wants to get through the moment is they'll be able to know what slides need to go because of how the
Mm.
audience or the people in the room are responding to that. And that takes a lot of practice. I had a conversation recently with a sales and marketing team about that. And we performed a role play session and we were developing that kind of thinking. In the process, one was determined to make the sale. They were even willing to negotiate on the pricing. But the customer in our role play was saying, I don't have the money, I don't have the budget for this right now. And we actually
Mm.
highlighted the issue of empathy, which is why I've got a smile from here to there. Because in that moment, instead of listening in the role play, the salesperson was like, okay, if you can't pay 3,000, how about 3.5? Because that's all my business can do. And so it still became about them and not listening and trying to hear the client's side of saying, you know what, you don't have money right now. Okay, I hear what you're saying. Maybe we can figure something out together or find a more appropriate time to, then it leaves that person feeling like, wow, they heard what I was trying to say, but they at least the time to listen to me and offer me what I needed to be offered. And, you know, when that money comes up again, that's the first person they're going to call. So that skill of reading the room isn't just about a physical room, it's also in your one-on-ones, your one-on-one engagements, your discovery calls online, because that's a thing now, actually repeating to the client or the person on the other end to say, okay, this is what I heard you say, also leaves both of you feeling quite positive about the conversation because both parties feel heard.
Well, I think just something to highlight at the end, I was actually thinking about this line in my head as we were having a conversation, that my dad always says that ignorance is expensive. Uninformed opinions are very expensive. They cost
Sure.
way more than one would realize or understand, but you can mitigate that by, as I said, listening. That can really help you, and you go from having an uninformed opinion to an informed opinion. If you just take the
Sure.
time to listen, if you have tact, you can go from having ignorance to full understanding. And so I just want to encourage anybody who's watching this that do the work for yourself, because it will help you and your personal brand. How others react is on them. It's not on you, but just make sure that you are protecting your reputation and your personal brand by saying and communicating tactfully. So you can really just make the most of the opportunities that are out there for yourself.
Yeah. Ah, love it. Well, thank you so much to everyone that's listening. This is the Imperfect Brand, where we just have candid and open conversations about what it means to have an imperfect brand, because it's not always curated, it's not always pretty. We don't always have it put together. But when we put our heads together and we share ideas and information like this, it should help you a little bit along the way. Thank you so much for listening in. Until we see each other again, bye.